Welcome to Speaker Insiders, episode number 11. Today, I have the privilege of having Matt Spezia on the show today. And I've known Matt for quite some time, and we just reconnected recently. And Matt, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, good soul. It's a privilege to be here.
Look, well, he's so eloquent, and we're going to have a great conversation here. And if you guys have not come to Matt's show, which he's been performing at Authentic Expressions.
Yep.
Omni Circle,
yep.
Right?
Just off of 12th and Topeka. You've seen the big Ichabod statue. It's just across the street from that.
Awesome. When's the next show coming up?
Every second Saturday of every month. So it'll be the second Saturday in July.
Awesome. So if you guys want to catch the next one, feel free to sign up at Omni Circle. You're not gonna regret it. It's gonna be a phenomenal show.
Always is.
So Matt is an acclaimed poet, advocate, mentor, and artist. So that's precisely how I want to introduce him, and we're going to dive into his phenomenal stories and history of becoming a poet. And Matt, floor is yours. Tell us how you started.
Yeah, so I really always been speaking in front of people before. My mom got me involved in 4-H very early, so doing project talks, presenting to people always came as something I really loved to do. And then in middle school, started doing like Model UN and basic debate, things like that. And then high school was debate and forensics, which I fell in love with forensics and that kind of stage performing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, how do I continue this? Can't sing, can't carry a note if you gave me a bucket to. So I'm like, okay, how do I do this? All right, I really enjoy hip hop and making music. I play a couple of instruments. I've always enjoyed a very wide range of music besides post 2008 country. It ruined the genre. But everything else I've always enjoyed. So I was like, how do I put some rhythmicness to this? And then I was, searching YouTube videos and found like battle rap and slam poetry. I'm like, there could be a combination here. And that's what I started writing and started doing. My first performance was at the old PTs across from Washburn. But my first one that really connected me to the scene was definitely Speakeasy Poets, which is still happening every first Wednesday at Arts Connect in Topeka over in Noto.
Wow. I did not know that at all. I mean,
this is still happening. That's been happening for, I want to say 8 years now, something like that. But yeah, been amazing people as Sue Edgerton and Annette Billing have been running that. And they're some of the most loving, open people you could ever meet. But I met Desmond and a guy named Desmond the poet, and then Mo Christo that had come out from Salina and Wichita. And then they brought me out to Salina to go do a performance at Ad Astra, and had been doing the I-70 circuit there for a couple of months, and then got brought down to Wichita by Desmond, who introduced me to a man named Black Ice, or DeAndre Hawthorne out of Chicago, and got linked up with him, started doing radio stuff up there, ended up winning my first national award in 2016 for Slam Poet of the Year. And I mean, it just kind of snowballed from there as far as early beginnings.
Wow, that was quite a story, because if audience, you don't know that Matt is multiple award-winning poet throughout the country. He's got a lot of stories to tell about that. So after you tap into that realm, so did you develop more passion for poet, and then what kind of aspects did you get into kind of really use poet as a platform to help people out?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was always something that I wanted to do, was community oriented, like the me, myself, and I mentality. It's ridiculous, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't do anything by yourself.
That's right.
So I always wanted to build up a team. I put team effort on literally everything. So I got involved in a lot of community activism. Early approaches were for suicide prevention and awareness. I lost a really good friend of mine at 17 to suicide. So that's always been a passion of mine. And I mean, but you got to take those negatives and try to put that energy, that negative energy that wasn't going to do anything. Let's put that positive energy back out there. Mm-hmm. Let's put that love into the world. So I do a lot with suicide prevention. Words Save Lives in Lawrence is actually going to be having its 10th year in September on World Suicide Prevention Day. So if anybody can make it out there, it's always at the Lawrence Performing Arts Space. It's this big collaborative workshop looking thing. Fantastic event. Marcia Epstein runs that. And then got involved with Poetry for Personal Power and P.O.E.T out of Chicago. Both of them are minority and LGBT focused organizations that promote diversity, promote equality, especially on the mental health side of things, which is a conversation not a lot of people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Using peer support and resources to engage with people in lived experience and give them something to do more than, and this needs to come off very clearly, take your medicine, please. Like, don't hear this as don't take your medicine, but do more than just take your pill and be okay. Let's start building on that. This establishes the okay. Like, take your pill, we're okay. Now let's start building on that. Let's get to somewhere better.
That's an amazing story. So I have to say that Matt, you are native Topeka, right?
Born in Leavenworth, but came out to Washburn at 18 and lived in Topeka the rest of mine. And then we just bought a house just north up in Meriden.
Okay. So Matt has devoted quite a bit of his time and his life in Topeka communities, and he's been very, very active throughout the community. I've heard a lot of good things about you. Matt, let's say throughout your recent past history, the activist activities you've been doing, what has been some of the really good stories that coming out or memories that you had so far that as a mentor, as an advocate, that really helping a group come out?
One of my favorite experiences was I got to be an assistant coach at Highland Park High School here in Topeka for a year for their debate and forensics team.
Did that just recently happen?
That was the year before the pandemic happened.
Wow.
And the only reason I didn't continue was, like, let's be honest, y'all, schools are borderline petri dishes as it is. And
it could be very stressful.
Yes.
Right?
And during a pandemic, I'm like, I love y'all. I will continue to, like, when you come to the poetry events, because Michelle Kirk, before she retired, was bringing a ton of the kids out to the poetry events. And it's like, I'll help you here. Let's be awesome. But that was one of my favorite experiences, was getting to do the debate and forensics coaching, because that's where I got my start. So I'm like, oh, can I instill that same passion here? And then as far as some of the protests and stuff we've done, Advocacy Day up at the Kansas State Capitol, that happens every March. And that's a couple thousand people in the rotunda making people listen. Our last big win through the Kansas Mental Health Advocacy Organization at KMHC, we just got 988 engaged in Kansas about 6 months ago. And 988 is the new suicide prevention hotline. Kansas was one of the first early adopters. Shout out to Amy Campbell and Monica Cruz for doing so much with that. And that was such a huge win that people, you don't have to remember that 8-digit number. You have 988. It's that immediate response, 24 hours a day, free. And Kansas was one of the early adopters because of that organization's pressure and advocacy across the state, honestly.
Right. So, because recently I myself have been learning some stuff about suicidal and depression, all that stuff, which is a very natural thing for anybody to go through. Right, Matt? I mean, everybody is going to go through that phase of life where maybe just time of day you feel like you're sad, you're depressed. And that's just how I feel like as human beings genetically built. I mean, we're not going to be happy all the time.
You're going to be on a cycle. If you're at 100% all the time, you're not at 100%. That's your average.
That's your average.
It's like, you can't. I always refer to it as, I think of a baseline, right? And throughout the day, you're going to have those blips that bring you down, or you're going to have those spikes that make you angry. Just return to that baseline. Just return to that person that you actually are. Because these dips and spikes, that's the abnormality. This is the person we are.
Right. So thank you so much for doing some of the, I would say, legwork and groundwork to really help the community to have that resource, like you said. So 988, that number, it might be just something that coming in handy for somebody really in need tonight. Could something that person might be feeling down today, and they know that on the other side of that phone that somebody can talk to him.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're just missing somebody you've lost, call them up, share some fun stories. Those people would love to just listen to that. Like, it doesn't have to be that it doesn't have to be that full crisis. It can be the, man, I feel myself starting to slip. Let's recognize this. I need to reach out to talk to somebody.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, just for people that would have just come out and offer that service to people.
Yeah, the great people that work at 988 line.
Right. So, Matt, I know that you work with a lot of people, youth, minorities, to really help them boost their self-confidence and things like that. What has been some of the success stories? I wouldn't say success stories, except profound memories that you have towards that goal to really help people.
Yes.
Any individual stand out, or any single stories?
So a couple of stories. Up in Chicago, getting to do the School in the Park event, it had a number of area schools out. There's probably 800 kids in the park, and we're doing poetry, spoken word, hip hop, just regular music, and just having this whole big event for these kids. And it's like, y'all made the choice to be here today. And it was so, just the immensity of that. Getting to go back and perform at Lansing High School, where I graduated from. I got to do a featured presentation before the medal awards at their forensic show. So 1,200 kids in the auditorium getting to hear that.
That's amazing. That's a big crowd.
Yeah. And then all of the community activism with building stages that I've seen, these nervous kids that are 16, 17, 18, that'll come up and be like, I wrote something. I'd really, can I perform? It's like, absolutely. This is a space for you. And then a couple years later, they're going to different cities performing. It's like, or honestly, the thing that makes me the happiest is I was the first person from Kansas to win a National Spoken Word Award from
Yes.
the NWPAs.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
And I mean, as wonderful as that is, it's the fact that now, if you look at the ballot this year, there's a dozen Kansas and Kansas City artists on that ballot. And the way that that's spread and that other people have been able to, because winning the individual thing, it's like cool, awesome award on the shelf. It's it's what comes from that. And did you build up your community from that? And it's like, yes, definitely the enduringness of it.
That's amazing. So basically you build a legacy behind you, right? Over the past, I would say 10 years or so.
Yeah, about
there's a legacy that behind you.
Oh gosh, it has been 10 years.
How old are you
years
when you started, by the way? Did you say in high school that when you first started, or middle school? That's when your mother that it
8 years old, I was doing project talks in 4-H. So I've been speaking in front of people from very early age, but really taking it seriously in middle school and then high school, but performing wise, like not in a school sponsored setting, like doing it on my own, 18. And I'll be 28 in August.
Wow. I've heard that, Matt, that public speaking is one of the most feared activities in America, right?
Yeah,
most people, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing when people are like, oh, how do you don't look like nervous or anything? It's, oh my God, I've been doing it for forever. But that nervousness doesn't go away. You just have to learn how to use, like, I still get incredibly nervous on stage.
100% agreed.
It's like you just learn to use it.
It's kind of like you put that in your back pocket and be like, kind of forget about it for a second, and then your natural practice or passion just come out of that, right?
Yeah, like you can take the raw feeling of anxiety and quash it down into adrenaline to get that energy usage out of it.
That's incredible. So what has been some of the situations where you feel like incredible nervous that you came out, I'm assuming every single time you delivered, and some meaningful messages, besides that event you just talked about, the School in a Park event. Can you name a couple more events where you feel like, hey, I mean, this is a big crowd, I still feel nervous? Because I feel like the audience could relate to this. It's everybody's still going to feel nervous.
Yeah, some of my biggest shows have been in Chicago. So I did a show for an artist who had recently passed away, Misconception, who was about a legend of Chicago poetry, hosted Voices Behind the Pens, which is a very predominant national poetry show. It's still on the air. I hosted it for a couple of years after Misconception, but a legend of Chicago poetry. And she had passed away just a few weeks before her album was set to release. So we're like, no, we're still doing this. We're going to do this. And the size of the crowd was so immense. And it's like, not only the number of people there, but what we were doing that show for. And it ended up being one of my best, most well-received performances. And to be able to do that for somebody who taught me so much about the professionalism of being a poet, a host, like, you're going to ask people, you're going to ask people to pay money to come see you. You should, there's a professionalism about that.
Right.
And she taught me how to be that professional, and to be able to do that was vitally important. And then doing an album release in Topeka, Salina, and Kansas City, respectfully, for album 1, 2, and 3. Keeping it at home like that, I think, was so, because so many people say, oh, I'm going to go out and book Myrtle Beach or whatever the heck they're thinking about doing, or this venue that, I'm going to go get the biggest venue in town and then be disappointed with it. It's like, no, keep it where you're supported. Like, these are the people that are allowing you to do this anyway, because you can't be an artist without people allowing you to be.
Right.
So it's like, stay with those people, build the community. Don't try to be up to the stars if you don't have a garden planted.
Wow, that's a great analogy. So let's go back 10 years. Did you ever think that after 10 years you will have such a crowd, such a big legacy, such huge ripples behind you?
Oh, I'd have called you crazy. I'd have called you crazy. No way. I just wanted something, like, when I started performing, it was just like, oh, I'm going to go to these open mics. I really like forensics. It's something to keep performing at. And people are like, oh no, you're very good. You need to come do this. You need to come do this. I'd love to have you over here. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, if you just, absolutely no. And unfathomably.
Wow, that's very humble for you to say that. I mean, this is incredible, because I went to the your last show. I was just completely blown away. I was like, this is not a Matt I knew. Because when we first got to know each other, at business settings and stuff like that, we're all trying to be professional. We didn't really tap into the intimate part of performing poets.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Right.
And I get that a lot, honestly, because I'm a very different person on stage. I'm much more bombastic. I'm louder. I'm not like as reserved, and like
that. I mean, I think that was showing me the true passion that you had for poets. Now this brings up a different question for you. There's so many different speaking or singing forms. You have, you have singing, you have songs, you have rap, you have different genres of music, right?
Yeah,
you have different speaking forms, different performing forms when it comes to vocal stuff. What has been some of the most intriguing characteristics of performing poets, performing poems, like in front of people?
Yeah, so I think there's probably four main styles of performance poetry.
Okay.
There's slam, which is competitive, it's timed, it's specifically hard. It's supposed to be more lyrical, like more paced out. Um, then there's the more emotional side of things, which these are you know, your sadder, your more somber pieces, your happier, the emotional range of things. I'm not trying to be lyrical. I'm trying to share a story with you.
Okay.
Then there's the technical ones, which are your form writings, your haikus, your ABCDs, like technical stuff. And then what I call bleeding heart poetry as the fourth, which is you have started to write, you have emotions, but you have no idea how to let people hear those yet. And these are the people that I love because they're just beginning and they're like, they have a passion for it. And it's like, oh no, yes, come here. We want to hear this. Yes, come get better. It's okay. My first poem sucked too, I promise. Like, but it's just that bleeding heart poetry. It's just if you can grab them and be like, okay, let's put some form to it. Let's move you over into one of these three, and they'll stay there for the rest of their lives.
That's amazing. So is poem something that are being encouraged in school, or a lot of kids are trying to get into it, or is that something that they have a lot of access to or they're exposed to?
Yes and no. So forensics, if you want to do performance, anything, dramatic readings, humorous interpretations, duo, stage set stuff, performance poetry, prose, or like what I did as my main event, argue about the news. Like extemporaneous speaking, domestic and foreign extemporaneous speaking in forensics is literally just complain about the news competitively.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something for everybody in it. And so that's very encouraged. Like teams in high schools that have, even decent support for it have, 60 kids on it. But it's so versatile, at least in Kansas schools, because it can be your English, your fine art, your elective, and then one other one that it can be. But it can count. You can take it 4 years because it'll count as something different for you. So that, if it's encouraged, is very available and there's something for everybody. But I think when people in general hear academic poetry, they think of old people 160 years ago. It's like, don't get me wrong, some of that's good, but like
Shakespeare type of stuff, right? Sort of Shakespeare type of stuff.
Yeah, so that's Middle English.
Okay.
I'm more talking about your Bradbury's and stuff like that, Whitman's, and it's like this is good. Like this is classically good, but it's not engaging to your first. You're 13. You don't want to. It's like, oh, the smoke towers in East England were so terrible on that day. No,
there's no correlation between
there's nothing there. So
right.
It's like that's why I think exposing kids, especially to stuff like Louder Than a Bomb, or even just having them out, at your local poetry show, support the local arts. They'll see that, oh, this is very different. This is something I can actually engage in. This is relatable. And I think that's part of the issue with classical teaching is like, okay, none of them were milking a cow at 3 a.m. by candlelight. Like this isn't a thing anymore.
Right. So wow, that's incredible. That's incredible stuff. So I'm assuming you're still spending quite a bit of time with local schools and different groups where to kind of encourage the young kids to kind of come into this form. Right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like still in contact with a number of high schools. Honestly, love doing work with different community centers that bring kids in, because those are the kids that, like, if you engage with the school, half the time it'll be, okay, you're going to come into this classroom or you're going to do this predetermined group of kids. Where if you do like the community centers or like JAG programs and stuff like that, those kids out of the schools are trying to do something. It's like, okay, there's an engagement hook here. Let me pull that out of you.
That's incredible. So Matt, let's talk about the mental health piece to poems, because I know you're a huge advocate for Kansas mental health. What do you think is something that poems have been able to help people to get out of mental health situations and then why do you think poems are such a great form to really to help people with that aspect, if it makes sense?
Yeah. So there's three big ones. It's the tangible aspect of it. It's not just rattling around in your head. It's not a bee buzzing around. There's something tangible there. Even if typed into a phone, written on a piece of paper, you did something kinetic to express that thought. And that in and of itself is powerful. It's like that thought has been expressed. It exists tangibly. We have a way to recall that. We can continue to look at that and see if we're better, or, oh, am I going down the wrong way from where I wanted to be here? Oh, I've gotten so much better than there. Having that piece of tangibility. Second, then it allows you to express it, and you'll understand that you're not alone. Like, people have been in at least a similar situation, and you'll find that support in expressing it, like that actual vulnerability in expressing it. Somebody's going to come up to you and be like, hey, I dealt with this same stuff. Let's come work on this together. And then the third is the sense of community that builds. It's like, oh, you have a place you belong now. It's not just, be in my little hole, be, pigeonholed into whatever I think of myself. No, I have a community that's letting me sprout. And so that's where I think that community poetry is those three aspects are so vital.
That's huge. I'm speechless after you told me that. That was just really powerful points right there. Because I know mental health is something that people don't talk about, because I feel like America's got this culture where I got to be strong. There's no weak points on me, right? I got to be the strongest person ever. I mean, I cannot really go back and cry, that type of thing, which is not true. Every human being goes through the cycle that we kind of mentioned when we first started the podcast. And just for people to be able to have the courage and bravery to come out and say, hey, look, it's okay. It's okay for me to write stuff down. And this is not a traditional way, maybe to most people, be like, this is not a traditional way to express themselves. And you have being a big proponent of this big force, behind all this stuff. So, Matt, what's your vision for 5 years from now? Like, what do you see?
Honestly, continuing to build up communities, working within my community as much as I can. I'm always been a team effort person. If there's a place that I can do some good, I'm going to be there for it. And then, building up the home that me and the wife bought. It's got a good chunk of land on it. I want to be doing some farmsteading, get some animals out there.
I'll bring some chickens over tonight. What do you think?
Hey, I'm in the process of getting a chicken coop.
Hey, you guys heard that, right? If you guys have some free chicken and stuff, call them Matt and give them some free chickens.
Right. Give me like 2 months and I'll have that built. Be done.
That's awesome. So, Matt, what's been something that you've been working on lately? Like, what's your current project
So been almost done with the 4th album finally. So I worked with a label for a little bit. Terrible. Don't do it. Bad experience. Don't recommend. 0 out of 10 would not repeat. So I scrapped the entire concept that I was working on for that period of time. I was like, I don't want this. This is terrible. And then I was in such a pin-stuck mood that it was just frustrating, like frustration writings. I'm like, this isn't what I want this to be either. And now I'm in such a better place for about the last year and a half, and especially in the last like 6 months. It's just been so much more positive and rebirthy, and that's what I've wanted it to be. And I'm finalizing the writings on it. I have a piece and a half left to finish editing. It's all written. I just have to finish the edits, and then going to start recording and work with my people that have made my backing music for the other 3 albums and get it done. Goal is hopefully about this time next year.
Wow, that's incredible. What's an album called?
Doesn't have it has a couple of working titles yet, but it doesn't have a name yet.
Okay, that's perfect. We'll be expecting to see something really fascinating coming out of the album. So do you have a platform where people can get a hold of your art?
Absolutely. You can find the professional album on Spotify. A ton of my videos of live performances is on YouTube. Like most of my live performances for my big touring era is on YouTube. You can find a lot of my individual songs on my Facebook page. Not really very active on Instagram, but there's some interesting other images, like more personal life stuff on Instagram. But yeah, Facebook and YouTube primarily.
That's amazing. Matt is just one of us here in Topeka, and world-renowned artist when it comes to poetry. And it's just amazing. He was so kind to share all the resources that he has. Matt, thank you so much for your time, for jumping on here and sharing all the information here. Anything you want to tell the audience, because I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel, on my business page, to really reach out to people that who want to be part of this new genre of expressing themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to any of your local artists. I guarantee you, if you type in the town that you're in, Topeka poetry scene, it'll come up with various things, or, just type in whatever town you happen to live in, poetry. I guarantee you'll find an open mic. Go out there. You're going to find some really genuine people, and they're going to love to have you. I promise you. If in Topeka directly, every first Wednesday is Speakeasy Poets at Arts Connect. Every 3rd Wednesday over at Round Table, which is literally just down the street. It's a bookstore in Noto. Kansas Authors Club does their event. They rotate between poetry and prose every other month. I believe July's is going to be poetry. I believe that's correct. But yeah, Kansas Authors Club's another really great resource. And then there's a ton of open mics that are happening in Lawrence. Just follow Voice of Lawrence Poetry. Marcia Epstein runs that page. She does a phenomenal job about keeping stuff up to date for your local area.
That's phenomenal information. So, Matt, I have to ask this question. So, being living in Topeka metro area, I would say. So over the past 4 or 5 years or so, or pre-pandemic, what has been some of the biggest change you've seen coming out of Topeka community? Because just right before you made that comment, so this thought was in my head saying, hey, a lot of people say there's nothing to do in Topeka.
Oh,
You just
no, absolutely
like what? You are looking around. What are we talking about? Right there, that's right. Because the stuff you just shared it with me, I was like, holy cow! If you want to get involved with poetry, right?
Yeah, I mean,
How many places you just named? Just
yeah,
right there.
Two Wolves Poetry over, and I didn't want to forget anybody. A couple more just came to name. Two Wolves Poetry just across the Capitol. They do an open mic. I believe it's every third Thursday. I believe. Noto Art Walk every first Friday. Of course, Authentic Expressions every second Saturday. Like you can go do an event just with art, you know, 5-6 times a month and spend maybe $30.
That's very encouraging for anybody who wants to be an artist, right? In any form, for the most part. I feel like Topeka has always been a big force supporting different types of arts.
Yeah.
So what have you seen coming out of Topeka, like over the past 4 or 5 years? Positivity, or what do you see?
The sheer connectivity that we've had. Like, I mean, over in Noto, there's such a connective scene. Like people from Speakeasy will come to my wife's event, Story Slam, every first Wednesday. Excuse me, every third Wednesday. Every 3 months, third Wednesday. There we go. She's gonna be mad at me. But anyways, Story Slam, like the fact that we have a kind of a uniqueness in this city that you don't find a lot of other places is that everybody goes to each other's events. There's no sectionality. There's no, oh, well, I'm part of this group, so I'm not going to your show.
That's so
like,
true.
There's none of that. Like everybody goes to each other's stuff. Like, oh, you know, this place is doing a food truck walk thing. Oh, awesome. Let's go out and support all the food trucks. Like Topeka is just there for it in general. And that's why I think it's funny when people are like, oh, there's nothing to do in Topeka. It's like, what are you talking about?
Some people do say that. That's some people do say that because that's actually one of the things, reasons I started to really encourage me to do this podcast, the Pod Show. It was to really to show people, look, there's a lot of stuff going on in Topeka. You just have to really go out and look.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some cool people out there, right? Like SJ started that Authentic Expression, that show. You were part of that.
Exactly. Like, I mean, there's so much. Like, and we have Washburn right there. So it's like it's not like you can't find sports stuff if you're into that too. It's like, hey, Washburn's got a nice football stadium.
Actually, it's pretty good. Washburn's pretty good. And you graduated from Washburn, right?
Yeah, graduated from Washburn.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So, and also last, I want to touch on this real quick. Matt, you have 3 years of radio hosting experience. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I feel like it's always something I want to get into, just talk to people.
Oh, yeah. It was
some fond memories you want to share.
Oh, yeah. I loved hosting Voices Behind the Pens. Like it's a show out of Chicago. It's still on the air Mondays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Central out of Chicago. You can find them on TalkShoe if you're not in the local area. They have all of their episodes that are live there. But that's such a fun show because you get people calling in from literally all over the country.
Okay.
So you'll go from, here's a California poet, here's an Alabama one, and you'll get your regulars that you'll start to recognize the numbers on.
Right.
So you can, hype them up a little bit like, oh, we're going to have, Mr. So-and-so on the line with us. And we already would recognize those numbers. Like the regulars made it awesome. Seeing that it's still alive and still being the platform for people to go test out pieces or, hey, I've got a feature coming up. Come check me out over here. Here's my 2-minute piece. Like, just the sheer platform that created. I love doing it. I hosted for 3 years. That's Black Ice's radio channel. Mentioned him earlier out of Chicago. And it was so much fun. I loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. You guys definitely need to check out that show. Well, I guess, I have one last question for you, Matt. I mean, this has been great talk. I really absolutely enjoyed this. Because before we started recording here, Matt mentioned to me that you speak multiple languages and stuff. And I speak a couple languages as well. And so English is not my first language. And after learning English for so long, I've come to realize English is a very, very beautiful language. Yeah. But for a lot of, people who English is their first language, they might not feel that way because it's just a tool for them to communicate with, right?
They don't understand the 7 different languages in a trench coat that English is.
So now I'm going to ask you this question, Matt. So with being able to speak so many languages, what has been some of the really beautiful points of English that stand out to you? Like what makes English such a beautiful language? Because I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I love it's not a romantic language in the fact that it takes a lot of roots from Latinized languages.
Okay.
But it also has its Germanic roots to it. So it has like if you look at how languages has evolved, and that's where I really love diving into it and learning, tidbits from these languages and being able to, basically, hey, I can ask for help in these different languages. Hey, I know how to order food and like this type of stuff. Like just that like basicness, or hi, hello, you having a good day? Like just those little phrases, and trying to pick up as many of those as possible, and seeing how language has evolved and how we've gotten here. Like if you try to read original Beowulf and you've not tried to read, early English stuff,
Mhm.
it doesn't even look like the same language.
No, not
And
at all.
Middle English, we've all done the Shakespeare stuff,
Yeah.
translated into modern on the other side of the page. Like it's evolved so tremendously, and it's been such a homogenizing of so many other languages. Like we use other languages in our language to express things like, oh, you made a social blunder. Oh, that was a faux pas. Like,
Really?
yeah, that's French.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, or oh man, this cake that rose was so good, this souffle. Like
Mm.
like the sheer like we bring so many different languages into ours and then just use them in their language, but as a part of our speech. And I think that's fascinating.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Matt, thank you so much for your talk here today. I look forward to many more talks in the future with you. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for your time, and
Thank
feel
you so
free,
much.
audience, and thank you so much for your time, and reach out to Matt on his social media platforms and check out his poets.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much.